The distress signal was weak. Not the kind that screamed for attention or flooded every frequency with desperate noise. No, this one was careful. Fragmented. Almost as if whoever sent it didn't want to be noticed. That alone made it dangerous. Commander Elias Rourke stood in the observation deck of Horizon's Anvil, a massive human orbital dock hanging like a steel giant above the quiet blue curve of an unclaimed world. Below him, cargo haulers drifted in slow, precise lanes. Repair drones buzzed like insects around half-dismantled ships. Routine. Order. Predictability. And then this signal had slipped into it like a whisper. "Run it again," Rourke said. Behind him, Lieutenant Hannah Kim leaned over her console, fingers moving quickly as the message replayed through the speakers, broken, distorted, but unmistakably intentional. Requesting assistance, vessel integrity compromised, we offered trade. Static swallowed the rest. Hannah frowned. That's the cleanest version I can get. It's not a standard language, but the translator's confident. They're asking for help. Help, Rourke repeated quietly. That word didn't travel far in space without consequences. Source, he asked. Hannah tapped another command. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room. A battered ship, drifting just beyond the outer perimeter of the system. Its structure was unlike anything in the human database. Layered, almost organic plating, fractured across its entire hull. Unknown make. Unknown species, she said. And they're barely holding together. Life support is fluctuating. Power cores unstable. Rourke stepped closer to the projection. The ship looked wrong. Not just alien. Injured. Deep gashes ran across its surface, not from debris or accident, but something precise. Something deliberate. Weapons fire. Who did that to you? He murmured. What was that, sir? Hannah asked. Rourke shook his head. Nothing. He crossed his arms, thinking. Around him, the bridge crew had gone quiet. Everyone knew the protocol. Unknown ship. Unknown species. Severe damage. Possible trap. Could be bait, one of the officers said. We've seen it before. Fake distress calls lure us in then. I know, Rourke cut in calmly. He kept his eyes on the drifting ship. If it was a trap, it was a good one. Because nothing about that vessel looked staged. It looked like something that had run out of options. Hannah spoke again, more softly this time. Sir, they're losing power faster now. If we don't respond, they won't last long. Silence settled over the room. Out there, beyond the safety of human-controlled space, something was dying. Rourke exhaled slowly. Open a channel, he said. A few heads turned. Sir? Hannah asked just to be sure. Open a channel, he repeated. She nodded and initiated the transmission. For a moment, there was nothing. Just static. Then the screen flickered. The figure that appeared was tall, taller than any human in the room. Its form was slender, almost fragile-looking, with layered, translucent skin that shimmered faintly like overlapping sheets of glass. Light passed through parts of it, refracting in soft, shifting colors. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were luminous, steady, and focused. Not panicked. Not aggressive. Just watching. Connection established, the translator announced. The being spoke. Its voice came through unevenly, as if struggling against both damage and unfamiliarity. Did not expect a response. Rourke stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. You sent a distress signal, he said evenly. We heard it. The pause. The aliens seemed to process that. We are outside your territory. We have no prior agreements. Yeah, Rourke said. We noticed. Another pause. We request repairs. We will compensate with knowledge, materials, anything of value. There was the expected part. The negotiation. Rourke glanced briefly at Hannah, then back at the alien. You don't need to offer anything right now, he said. The being stilled. Clarify. Rourke allowed himself a faint smile. You're falling apart out there. Let's fix that first. Silence. Even the bridge crew seemed to hold their breath. The alien's luminous gaze didn't waver. You would provide assistance without confirmed exchange? Yeah, Rourke said simply. That is illogical. Welcome to humans, he replied. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the alien inclined its head slightly, a gesture that felt careful. Measured. We accept. Rourke nodded once. Transmit your docking trajectory. We'll guide you in. Hannah was already moving, pulling up navigation overlays, calculating safe approach vectors. Sir, she said quietly, if this goes wrong... It won't, Rourke said. He didn't sound arrogant. Just certain. The damaged vessel began to move. Slowly. Painfully. Like a wounded animal forcing itself forward one last time. As it crossed into the outer boundary of the dock's control zone, automated systems lit up across Horizon's anvil. Tractor beams activated. Guidance signals pulsed. Human engineers started assembling in the docking bays, alerted before the order was even fully given. Rourke watched it all unfold. The alien ship trembled as it approached, sections of its hull flickering, small bursts of energy venting into space. It shouldn't have made it this far. But it had. Docking clamps ready, Hannah reported. Stabilization fields online. Atmospheric containment prepared. Rourke nodded. Bring them in. The massive doors of the primary repair bay opened like the jaws of some enormous machine. Slowly, carefully, the alien vessel was pulled inside. For the first time, it was safe. Or at least safer. As the bay sealed behind it, Rourke turned away from the observation deck. Get engineering teams on standby, he said. Full diagnostic sweep. Prioritize structural integrity and life support. Yes, sir. He paused at the doorway, glancing back once more. The alien ship sat in the center of the bay, scarred, broken, but no longer alone. Rourke exhaled. Let's see what you're made of, he murmured. And down below, for the first time since they entered human space, the dying ship stopped drifting. The first thing the Valori noticed was the noise. Not chaos. No, human space wasn't chaotic. It was structured, efficient, almost aggressively organized. But it was loud. Metal rang against metal. Welding torches hissed. Heavy machinery moved with deep, rhythmic vibrations that traveled through the hull of their crippled vessel. Voices echoed across the docking bay, quick, sharp, confident. Alive. Caelthren stood at the edge of their ship's open breach, watching. Humans moved everywhere. They didn't hesitate. They didn't pause to study or debate. They just began. Within minutes of docking, dozens of them had flooded into the Valori vessel, scanning systems, mapping damage, marking structural fractures with glowing indicators. Small hovering drones followed them like obedient companions, projecting schematics into the air. One human crouched near a torn conduit, tools already in hand. This is not standard, the human muttered. Another leaned over. No kidding. Looks like bioreactive alloy. Can we patch it? Give me 10 minutes. Caelthren felt something unfamiliar stir in their chest. Confusion. Not at the humans' technology, but at their attitude. There was no fear. No visible caution. They worked inside an unknown alien vessel as if it were routine. As if helping strangers was routine. A second Valori approached Caelthren, their voice low. Leader, they have not requested terms. I am aware, Caelthren replied. They have not asked for payment. Not even confirmation. I am aware of that as well. The other Valori hesitated. This is unnatural. Caelthren did not answer. Because they agreed. Hours passed. Systems that had been failing for cycles flickered back to life. Light stabilized. Structural integrity fields re-engaged in sections long thought lost. The constant, quiet groan of a dying ship began to fade. And still, no demands. No negotiations. Only work. Caelthren moved deeper into the docking bay, accompanied by two of their kind. Humans stepped aside as they passed, some glancing up briefly, others offering quick nods before returning to their tasks. One even waved. A casual gesture. Friendly. Caelthren didn't know how to respond. Then something else happened. A human approached. Not with tools. Not with instruments. With a small container. Steam curled upward from its surface. Hey, the human said, stopping a few steps away. You've been standing here a while. Kael'thren studied them. The human was smaller, less imposing than many others, with dark hair tied back and a faint smudge of grease across their cheek. What is that? Kael'thren asked. The human blinked, then smiled. This. They lifted the container slightly. Coffee. The translator hesitated, then processed the word. A heated liquid stimulant derived from organic matter. Kael'thren's gaze flicked from the human to the container. You are offering this to me? Yeah, the human said. Figured you could use it. There was no hesitation in their voice. No expectation. Just an offer. Kael'thren extended a long, slender hand and accepted the container. It was warm. Unusually so. They hesitated for only a moment before bringing it closer, analyzing the scent. Bitter. Complex. This is safe for consumption? Kael'thren asked. The human chuckled. For us? Absolutely. For you? We ran a quick scan. Should be fine. Worst case, you'll hate the taste. Kael'thren tilted the container slightly, then took a cautious sip. The reaction was immediate. Their entire sensory system flared. The bitterness hit first, sharp, almost aggressive, followed by a deep, lingering warmth that spread through their body in slow, steady waves. Their vision sharpened. Their thoughts aligned. It was unlike anything they had experienced. This, Kael'thren paused, searching for the correct word. This is remarkable. The human grinned. Yeah, that's pretty much the standard reaction. Around them, other Valori were being approached in similar ways. More containers were passed. More hesitant sips were taken. And more eyes widened. Kael'thren looked back at the human. Why are you doing this? The question came out sharper than intended. The human seemed surprised. Doing what? You are repairing our vessel. Providing sustenance. Offering resources. Kael'thren's voice lowered. Without condition. The human shrugged slightly. You needed help. That is not sufficient reasoning, Kael'thren said. The human tilted their head, thinking. Maybe not where you're from, they admitted. But around here? It's enough. Kael'thren studied them carefully. You do not fear us? The human laughed softly. Should we? You do not know us. Our capabilities. Our intentions. The human took a sip from their own container. Yeah, they said. But we know what it looks like when someone's in trouble. The pause. Then more quietly. And you looked like you were in a lot of trouble. Kael'thren had no immediate response. Because that was true. Later, Kael'thren found Commander Rourke standing near the central repair platform, watching as a team of engineers reinforced one of the Valori ship's fractured support structures. You lead this place, Kael'thren said. Rourke glanced over. More or less. Kael'thren stepped closer. Your people act without hesitation. Yeah, Rourke said. We tend to do that. You risk yourselves inside unknown systems. You expose your infrastructure to potential threat. Rourke nodded. Also true. Kael'thren's gaze sharpened. Why? Rourke looked back at the Valori leader, completely calm. Because if we stopped to be afraid every time something unfamiliar showed up, he said, we'd never get anything done. Kael'thren considered that. You are either highly confident or highly reckless. Rourke smirked. Both. For a moment, the sounds of the dock filled the space between them. Tools, voices, the steady hum of restored systems. Kael'thren looked out across the bay. At the humans working tirelessly. At their ship, no longer dying. At their people, no longer waiting for the end. This coffee, Kael'thren said slowly. It is customary? Rourke chuckled. Oh yeah, you'll see a lot of that. Kael'thren nodded faintly. Then your species is unusual. Rourke raised his own cup slightly. You have no idea. And for the first time since entering human space, Kael'thren felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Not safety. Not yet. But something close. By the third day, the Valori ship no longer felt like a tomb. It still bore scars, deep, jagged fractures across its outer hull, but inside, systems were stabilizing. Lights held steady. Power flowed without interruption. The constant, quiet tremor of imminent failure had finally faded. It should have brought relief. Instead, it brought questions. Lieutenant Hannah Kim stared at the damage logs, her brow furrowed. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. Across the console, layers of diagnostic data scrolled in overlapping streams: structural readings, thermal signatures, energy residue traces. The deeper she looked, the less it resembled random damage. It was too clean, too precise. Commander Rourke stepped beside her. "Talk to me." Hannah tapped the display, isolating a section of the hull. "Look at this," she said. "Fracture pattern here, straight line penetration, minimal dispersion. That's not debris impact. That's directed energy." She flicked to another section. "And here, localized system collapse without hull breach. Something bypassed their outer armor and targeted internal networks directly." Rourke's expression hardened. "Weaponized," he said. Hannah nodded. "Not just weaponized. Efficient." She hesitated. Whoever did this knew exactly where to hit. Rourke looked out across the docking bay. The Valori ship sat suspended in the center, surrounded by human crews still working, still repairing, still restoring. It didn't look like a survivor. It looked like something that had escaped. Barely. "Have they said anything?" he asked. Hannah shook her head. "Nothing. They've avoided every question about it." Rourke exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "I'll ask." Caelthren stood alone when Rourke found them. They were near one of the observation platforms, looking out at the vast interior of Horizon's anvil. Below, humans moved in coordinated patterns, repair crews finishing their work, drones returning to charging stations, cargo systems resetting to standard operations. Order restored. "You've been watching them for a while," Rourke said as he approached. Caelthren didn't turn. "Your species is efficient." Rourke shrugged. "We try." A brief silence followed. Then Caelthren spoke again. "And unusual." Rourke smirked faintly. "Yeah, I've heard that." Caelthren finally turned. "You act without hesitation. Without negotiation. Without fear." Rourke tilted his head slightly. "You keep saying that like it's a bad thing." "It is unfamiliar." Rourke nodded. "Fair enough." He stepped closer, resting his hands lightly on the railing. "Mind if I ask you something?" Caelthren's gaze sharpened. "You may ask." Rourke didn't waste time. "Who attacked you?" The question landed hard. Caelthren didn't answer. Their posture changed, subtly, but unmistakably. Shoulders tightening. Light within their translucent form dimming slightly. Defensive. "You've been avoiding it," Rourke continued. "But we've seen the damage. That wasn't an accident." Still no response. Rourke's voice lowered. "That was someone trying to kill you." Caelthren's gaze shifted, past Rourke, across the bay, toward their ship. For a long moment, it seemed like they wouldn't answer at all. "There are consequences to speaking of them." Rourke didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said. "I figured." Another pause. Longer this time. He didn't push. Didn't rush. He just waited. Eventually, Caelthren spoke. "They are called the Draxel Dominion." The name felt heavy, even without context. Rourke nodded slowly. "Never heard of them." "You will." Caelthren raised a hand. A projection flickered into existence between them, stars, systems, data points. Destruction. Entire fleets torn apart. Ships shattered mid-flight. Energy beams slicing through formations with terrifying precision. Worlds burning under sustained bombardment. No survivors. No mercy. Rourke's jaw tightened. "They don't mess around," he said quietly. "They do not engage in war as you understand it," Caelthren replied. "They do not conquer territory. They do not subjugate populations." Another image appeared. A Valori world. Lush, luminous, alive. Gone. Reduced to a lifeless sphere of ash and debris. They erase. The word lingered. Rourke stared at the projection. "At any point," he asked, "did you fight back?" Kael'thren's posture stiffened. We attempted resistance. And? Silence. That was answer enough. Hannah's voice crackled over Rourke's calm. I'm seeing the data feed. That's not just a stronger fleet. That's systematic annihilation. Yeah, Rourke said quietly. I see it. Kael'thren lowered their hand. The projection vanished. We are not a warlike species, they said. We pursued knowledge, exploration, harmony. Rourke glanced at them. And they didn't care. No. The single word carried more weight than anything else they had said. Rourke exhaled slowly. How many of you are left? Kael'thren hesitated. We do not know. Our communication networks were destroyed. Our worlds, lost. Rourke looked back at the now stable Valori ship. You're running. Kael'thren's gaze sharpened. We are surviving. Rourke nodded once. Fair. Another silence settled between them. But it felt different now. Heavier. More real. Why come here? Rourke asked. Kael'thren didn't answer immediately. Your territory is unaligned, they said finally. You are not part of any known coalition. Your species is recent. Unpredictable. Rourke raised an eyebrow. Unpredictable, huh? Yes. The pause. Then more quietly, kind. That word again. Carefully chosen. Carefully said. Rourke let out a small breath. Yeah, he said. We get that sometimes. Kael'thren studied him. We did not expect assistance. Most people don't, Rourke replied. And yet, you gave it. Rourke shrugged slightly. You asked. Kael'thren tilted their head. That is not sufficient reasoning. Rourke smiled faintly. Maybe not where you're from. He straightened, his expression shifting, subtle, but unmistakable. Focused. But around here, he said, it's enough. Kael'thren held his gaze. If they come here, your species will be at risk. Rourke didn't look away. Yeah, he said. The beat. Wouldn't be the first time. Kael'thren seemed to study that response carefully, as if trying to understand something deeper than the words themselves. You are not afraid, they said. Rourke considered that, then shook his head. Oh, we get afraid, he said. We're just not very good at letting it stop us. Another pause. Then Kael'thren asked the question that mattered. If they follow us here, what will you do? Rourke looked out across the docking bay. At the repaired ship. At the humans still working. At the fragile line between peace and what might come next. Then he answered. Simple. Direct. Certain. We'll deal with it. And for the first time, Kael'thren began to wonder if the Draxel Dominion had made a mistake. By the fourth day, the Valori ship was no longer dying. It was reborn. Where there had once been fractures, there were now reinforced plates, sleeker, stronger, unmistakably human in design. Power flowed steadily through rebuilt conduits. Systems that had flickered on the edge of collapse now responded with crisp, reliable precision. It should have been enough. Repairs completed. Lives saved. Debt acknowledged. Departure. That was the logical conclusion. But humanity, Kael'thren had learned, did not always follow logic. Your vessel is operational, Lieutenant Hannah Kim said, standing beside a floating schematic of the Valori ship. Better than operational, actually. We replaced about 30% of your internal systems. You're running cleaner than before the damage. Kael'thren studied the display. Every line was stable. Every indicator solid. It was impossible. You have restored us, Kael'thren said quietly. Beyond expectation. Hannah gave a small smile. We try. There was a pause. Then Kael'thren asked the question that had been forming for some time. What do you require in return? Hannah blinked. For the repairs, Kael'thren clarified. Your compensation. Hannah glanced toward the far side of the bay, toward where Commander Rourke stood speaking with a group of officers. Honestly, she said, you should probably ask him. Rourke didn't look surprised when Kael'thren approached. Everything running smoothly? He asked. Yes, Kael'thren replied. Your engineers have exceeded all projections. Good, Rourke said. That's what we like to hear. Kael'thren held his gaze. We are prepared to discuss compensation. Rourke tilted his head slightly. For what? For the repairs. The resources you have invested. The time. The risk. Rourke was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head. Not necessary. Calthren stilled. Clarify. Rourke gestured casually toward the repaired vessel. You needed help. We gave it. That's the end of the transaction. That is not a transaction, Calthren said. Sure it is, Rourke replied. Just not the kind you're used to. Calthren's voice lowered. You have asked for nothing. Not true, Rourke said. Calthren leaned forward slightly. What do you want? Rourke's expression shifted, not darker, not threatening, but focused. Information, he said. Calthren froze. Rourke stepped closer. The damage on your ship wasn't an accident, he continued. That wasn't debris. That was weapons fire. Clean, controlled, systematic. Calthren said nothing. Rourke's voice dropped. Who did that to you? Silence stretched between them. Across the bay, humans continued working, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, with the weight of the question. Calthren's luminous gaze dimmed slightly. This knowledge is not without consequence. Yeah, Rourke said. I figured. Calthren hesitated. Then, slowly they raised a hand. A projection flickered to life between them. Stars. Coordinates. Data streams. And then, massive vessels unlike anything humanity had recorded. Jagged, imposing, built for destruction without elegance or restraint. Entire fleets reduced to drifting wreckage. Worlds burning under relentless orbital bombardment. Hannah stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Those signatures, she murmured. That's not random aggression. That's extermination. Calthren's voice was quiet. They are known as the Draxel Dominion. The name hung in the air like a warning. They do not conquer, Calthren continued. They do not negotiate. They do not occupy. Another image flashed, a Valori world, vibrant and alive. Then gone. Reduced to ash and silence. They erase. Rourke's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. How many of you are left? He asked. Calthren hesitated. Do not know. We have not detected any surviving signals. Hannah exhaled slowly. So you're running? Calthren turned toward her. We are surviving. Rourke nodded once. Fair. He looked back at the projection. At any point, did you fight back? Calthren's posture stiffened. We attempted resistance. It was ineffective. Rourke studied the data. Then he reached out and dismissed the projection with a simple gesture. The images vanished. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Well, Rourke said finally, that's a problem. Calthren blinked. You acknowledge the threat? Rourke gave a short, humorless chuckle. Oh, we definitely acknowledge it. He turned, gesturing toward the far end of the docking bay. Come with me. The path they took led away from the repair sectors. Away from the noise of tools and machinery. Deeper. Security increased with every step. Doors required layered authorization. Armed personnel stood watch at key intersections. Calthren noticed all of it. You are bringing us into a restricted area, they said. Yep, Rourke replied. Why? Rourke didn't answer. Not until the final door opened. It slid apart with a deep, resonant sound. And beyond it, power. The chamber was vast. Far larger than the repair bays. And filled with ships. Not damaged. Not under construction. Ready. Human warships loomed in silent rows, their hulls dark and angular, layered with armor plating that looked less designed, and more grown for endurance. Weapon arrays lined their surfaces, dense, purposeful, unmistakably lethal. They were not elegant. They were not subtle. They were built to win. Calthren stopped. Every instinct screamed caution. These are military vessels. Rourke stepped forward into the chamber. Battleships, he said. The word carried weight. Calthren's voice lowered. Why are you showing us this? Rourke turned to face them. And for the first time since they had met him, there was no trace of casual humor in his expression. Because you're not leaving here empty-handed. Calthren froze. We do not understand. Rourke gestured toward the fleet. You came here looking for repairs, he said. His voice was calm, steady, certain. You're leaving with something better. A long silence followed. Then slowly, you would provide us with weapons? Rourke shook his head slightly. Not just weapons. He met Calethren's gaze directly. We're going to teach you how to fight back. The words landed like a shockwave. Calethren stared at him. At the ships. At the sheer, overwhelming implication of what humanity was offering. Why? They asked, their voice barely above a whisper. Rourke didn't hesitate. Because someone tried to wipe you out, he said. His eyes hardened. And humans don't do half measures. Behind him, the silent fleet waited. Not as a display, but as a promise. The Valori had never prepared for war like this. Their kind had studied conflict, modeled it, avoided it whenever possible. But humans? Humans built for it. The transformation began immediately. Human engineers didn't just hand over ships, they taught. Relentlessly, efficiently, without hesitation. Valori crews were integrated into human simulators. Neural interfaces were adapted. Command systems were rewritten to match Valori perception and reaction speeds. And through it all, there was always coffee. Calethren stood inside the command chamber of a human battleship, now partially modified for Valori physiology. The walls were lined with tactical displays, each one feeding real-time combat data into a central neural interface. It was overwhelming, precise, terrifying. Breathe, Hannah Kim said from beside him. You're overloading. Calethren exhaled slowly. Your systems are aggressive. Hannah smirked. That's one way to put it. She tapped the console, simplifying the interface slightly. You don't need to process everything at once. Humans don't either. We rely on instinct, training, and a little bit of controlled chaos. Calethren glanced at her. Controlled chaos is a contradiction. Yeah, she said. Welcome to humanity. 3 days later, the fleet was ready. Human battleships, massive, armored, unapologetically brutal, formed a defensive line at the edge of the system. Alongside them, Valori ships, once fragile, once fleeing, now reinforced, armed, and something else entirely. Determined, Calethren stood on the command deck beside Rourke, staring out at the stars. They will come, Calethren said. Rourke nodded. Yeah. I figured. You are choosing to engage them. Also true. Calethren turned slightly. You could allow us to leave. Avoid this conflict entirely. Rourke glanced at him. Could, he agreed. Then he looked back at the void. But that's not really our style. Calethren studied him. You fight for us. Rourke shook his head. No, he said. A small pause. We fight with you. The alert came without warning. Contact, a voice called out across the deck. Multiple signatures, dropping out of warp. Space itself seemed to tear open. The Draxel Dominion had arrived. Their ships were larger than expected. Darker. Jagged structures that looked less like vessels and more like weapons given motion. Energy signatures flared across their hulls, weapons already charging as they entered real space. They did not hesitate. They never did. Formation. Rourke snapped. Human battleships surged forward, engines igniting with controlled fury. Valori ships followed, falling into position with practiced precision. Calethren felt it then. Not the quiet, distant fear of extinction, but the immediate, visceral fear of battle. They are advancing, Calethren said. Yeah, Rourke replied calmly. Good. Kael'thren blinked. Good. Rourke didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached to the side and picked something up. A simple container. Steam rose from it. He held it out. Kael'thren stared. This is coffee. Rourke nodded. Best time for it. We are about to engage a superior force. Exactly. Kael'thren hesitated, then slowly took it. The warmth spread through his hand. Familiar now. Grounding. He took a sip. The bitterness hit first. Then the clarity. The focus. The strange, steady calm that seemed uniquely human. Rourke watched him. Helps, he said. Kael'thren lowered the container. Your species prepares for war, like this? Rourke smirked faintly. Among other things. Enemy weapons charging. Range closing. Targeting solutions active. The bridge erupted into motion. Data streamed across every surface. Commands were issued in rapid succession. Human voices overlapped, but never conflicted. It wasn't chaos. It was orchestration. Valori fleet, hold formation. Hannah's voice echoed through the comms. Follow our lead. Kael'thren straightened. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Valori vessels, he said, his voice steady. Maintain alignment. Prepare to engage. Across the void, the Draxel fleet opened fire. Beams of searing energy lanced forward, tearing through space with devastating force. Brace, someone shouted. The first impacts struck the human front line. Shields flared. Armor held. And then, return fire. Rourke's voice was calm. Almost quiet. But it carried across every channel. Human battleships answered. Not with hesitation. Not with fear. But with overwhelming force. Railguns thundered. Plasma batteries roared. Missile swarms ignited the darkness between fleets. The void lit up with violence. Kael'thren watched as one of the Draxel vessels, massive, imposing, was struck repeatedly, its hull cracking under the relentless assault. Broke. Exploded into fragments of burning debris. They can be destroyed, Kael'thren whispered. Rourke glanced at him. Oh yeah, he said. Everything can be destroyed. The Valori joined the fight. At first, cautiously. Then, fiercely. Their upgraded systems responded with precision. Their weapons, enhanced by human design, struck harder than anything they had fielded before. And for the first time since the Draxel had found them, they were not running. They were fighting. Kael'thren felt it fully now. Not just fear. Not just survival. Something else. Resolve. Target locked, a Valori pilot reported. Fire, Kael'thren ordered. The shot hit true. Another Draxel ship faltered. The battle raged. But the outcome was no longer certain. And for the first time, the Draxel Dominion began to slow. To hesitate. To realize. They were no longer hunting prey. They had found something else. Rourke leaned back slightly, watching the shifting tide of battle. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. All right, he said. Kael'thren looked at him. What? Rourke's eyes stayed on the battlefield. Now they understand. Understand what? Rourke lifted his own coffee, taking a slow sip. That they picked the wrong species to mess with. And out in the burning dark, humanity proved it.